Welcome back to the Freely Roaming Podcast. My name is Dan.
And my name is Marlene.
Today we're sitting on the coast of Peru at the little seaside village of Huanchaco, which is about 20 minutes outside of Trujillo. Trujillo being the third largest city in all of Peru. We've been in Peru for about 3 weeks, roughly. And we've been really happy to be back on the Pacific coast again.
And why is that, Dan?
Oh, you know, the hospitality, the great food, and there's just a little bit of surfing now and then.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So one of the things we really wanted to do once we left Ecuador is to get back on the coast, because we had heard that the coast of Peru is not hot like the coast that we've been at for the last year and a half. Ever since we got to basically like Mexico or El Salvador.
So that's why we're actually wearing jackets right now.
Oh, yeah.
Dan.
Yeah, it's in the 60s. It's in the 60s there.
Yeah.
And we started out in the northern part. We came right to the northern coast of Peru, and we've just been making our way down slowly. So we've been doing a lot of boondocking, we've been doing a lot of wild camping, a lot of surfing, camping right on the water, which has been really great. But that also means that, you know, we don't have as much like electricity to work on, like, you know, computer power intensive projects. But we finally, here in Huanchaco, we were able to put together our latest podcast. This one we recorded back when we were still in Cartagena. We have 2 episodes that we have recorded that we need to put together, and this is being one of the 2. And this is from our friend Austin White, and some of you guys might know him if you've been following us for a while. If you follow Full-Time Travelers going back, you know, upwards of 20 years, you may know his parents, Jen and Greg, and they were known as the Bare Naked Family. This is back in the day before like Instagram was a thing, even before Facebook, before YouTube. Right around the time when we started back in 2008, they've been on the road for a couple of years already. So we had known each other from way back in the day, and they had just finished up their sort of full-time on the road traveling, and had settled in the town of Austin, Texas. And that's when we first met the whole family. Well, actually we met 4 of the 5. So they're a family of 5. Austin being the oldest of the 3 kids, and he's got 2 younger sisters, Kesley and Sunny. They were sort of the people that we looked at as, well, how is it possible to raise kids on the road? Like, what would they turn out to be?
Right.
And one of the things that we realized when we first met them is that you can raise really great kids on the road. And in fact, our first impression of Austin, he was in high school when we first met him. He's now in his early 30s, which is wild, insane idea for me to comprehend. But he was in high school. He was like basically a kid in his like mid-teens, but he was talking to us like he's an adult. He wasn't your typical like teenager that we would have associated, like the personality, the attitude, the way they speak. It was just so refreshing to meet him back in the day, and it really gave us the idea that we can do this with our kids long term. Even back then, we never really thought that we'd go for as long as we have.
We thought, oh, when they go to school, when it's time to go to school, we'll just stop. And then we met Austin and his family, and this like light bulb, I think we had a light bulb moment with their family that these kids are really well adjusted, and they can talk to adults, and little kids like play with our, you know, our 3.
They didn't have to just hang out with kids their own age.
Yeah, and he seemed like a well-rounded, you know, good guy, and we can raise good kids also. Yeah,
and we've come across and hung out with their family again a couple of other times. We met Jen and Greg again in South Dakota a few years ago, and then we also spent time with them in Astoria, Oregon, when they were renting a house in Oregon as a family. And just this last summer when we were back in California and we went to Overland Expo in Oregon, we ran into Austin again. It was the first time we've seen him since he's like a full-blown adult. So that was really cool. And we invited him to be on this podcast for several different reasons. You know, he's a prolific photographer and creator and storyteller. He's got all this history with his family traveling full-time. And he's got this history recently of himself traveling as a adult. So he's got this different perspective of all these different ways of how this lifestyle can be.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's kind of a full circle moment because when we first met him, we didn't even think about homeschooling our kids.
Yeah.
And now one of our homeschool kids is about to start her senior year and graduate. So it's funny how
we got
the
to pick his brain a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny how the timing worked out.
And the cool things that you'll hear in this podcast is what his perspectives were as a child growing up on the road, traveling with his family. And some of it is what you would expect. You know, as a teenage boy with a lot of testosterone growing up as an adolescent, there's a lot of headbutting. He's a strong-willed young man, and you know his father is basically, you know, just an older version of him, and they butted heads, but they also figure out that, you know, this is how their relationship needs to be to get along. And also he says that other parents have asked him about his perspective as a kid full-timing growing up on the road, because we get asked those same questions from probably those same parents, but we get asked the question from a different angle. You know, so we found this really interesting. So we wanted him to be on our podcast, and this is like a 2-hour-long podcast. We talked about everything from traveling on the road, being a photographer in modern days. We talk about artificial intelligence. We talked about his new sort of love for sailing, his move to Durango, Colorado, and also being a gear nerd. We talked about cameras and just all kinds of other stuff. So we hope you guys enjoy this. This was a really fun chat we had with Austin, and I know that his parents are watching. So hi, Greg and Jen.
Hello.
We miss you guys, and we hope you enjoy this podcast with Austin White. How's Colorado? Are you based in Durango now?
Yep. So I moved to Durango full time. When was that? August of last year. I moved there, and then I had moved out of Bend. I think it was like May or something like that. May, June of last year. Yeah, so coming up on a year. And then just kind of moved back into the truck camper and just drove around Colorado. Kind of got out of Oregon and everything, and then I think I was on the road for a little bit, and then finally was like, all right, I'm ready to be kind of in Durango and all this area. But man, it's been awesome. I just because like as you guys know, I was in Oregon. I was in Oregon for about 10 years, just based out of there. And, you know, that was always my spot coming back. And then I was in Bend for, it was like 7, almost 8 of those years. So it was definitely, I spent all my 20s there, basically. So it was wild to move. And though I moved a lot already, it was weird to go from, I'm an Oregon resident to I'm a Colorado resident, because the only time I had ever done that was moving from Texas, you know, as a teenager to a young adult. And then now it's like Colorado's like my 30s era, you know, like my adult era. So it's been awesome, man. It's I've been wanting to be out here in Colorado for a long time. And even before we moved to Oregon, there was talk of like I wanted personally to move to Boulder myself, and then the family was going to move to Oregon. And so being out here has been a big step for me. So it's been awesome. And
Colorado's
haven't regretted
big. Everybody's moving to Colorado now. You know, it feels like for us to still be on the road, we're missing out on all the exciting Colorado stuff that's happening. Like everybody, if they're not living in Colorado, they're going to Colorado every summer.
They are. It is getting insane. The good thing about Durango specifically, though, this corner of Colorado, is it's like you kind of have to be going here to, you know, you're not driving through like how it is with like Estes Park, Boulder, Nederland, those kind of things near the Front Range.
You're not anywhere near Denver where you are.
And I'm totally fine with that. I'm totally fine with that. Denver, I've been up to Denver a few times since being here, and it's just freaking wild up there.
It's a zoo, huh?
Super busy. Yeah, it's a zoo.
Yeah.
So what I love about it though is it's like, for my photography and stuff, is it's not only my photography but just all the stuff that I like to do as well. Is I'm an hour from Silverton, Ouray, all those areas, the $1 Million Highway, and just beautiful stuff like that. Or 3 hours from Telluride, or I go the opposite direction and I'm 2 hours from Monument Valley, Valley of the Gods, 3 hours to Moab. Like all of these other amazing places. So the diversity
you got the great
here
sand dunes right there. You got Mesa Verde,
and I got the great
right
sand
there.
dunes. Yep.
Yeah.
And if I really want the coast, I'm 12 hours to San Diego. So that's not bad. Or I'm 14 hours to San Carlos down in Mexico. So it's not bad. I like it.
That's cool. So are you living by yourself? You got roommates? What's your setup like?
Yeah, so I have I'm in a house right now that I have two of my really good friends.
I'm basically saying this to know if we can crash when we show up, right? I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah.
No, there's
have a driveway.
There's way too many of us. There's way too many of us.
So I'm working and crossing my fingers. I sent an application for this really dope house on 2 acres. And it was specifically, I wanted this one just to rent. I'm trying to figure out buying a home in the next 3 years. Is kind of one of my big plans. Yeah. But it's funny that you say that because I'm like, yeah. So I basically want to do summers and falls here in Durango, and then winters down in Baja, really, or either Florida as well too, to really start pushing sailing as a big part of my life now. Mm-hmm. But this house that I put in, it's funny that you say that because I'm like, no, I have to have space for people when they're driving through because I have so many friends that want to crash, and so many people did that for me when I was on the road. So it's important for me to have that kind of space. And I'm like, I want to have hookups. I want to have a little nice patio. So you guys can just pull the van in and then just be freaking set up, have showers, laundry, all that kind of stuff. The nomadic side.
Some people want a pool. Some people want fun things like a putting green, stuff like that. But for people like us, we want RV hookups. Do you ever? You're not far from Nathan and Renee. Do you ever go?
So
have you seen them there yet?
I haven't seen them there here yet. I was just down in Texas with my parents, and we had flown down there. I don't know if you guys saw that. We flew down to surprise my mom for her birthday.
That's
and she was telling me it was really cool. It was special. We had never done something like that, and she had absolutely no idea. So she lost her freaking mind. It was awesome. But no, I haven't seen them yet. I totally forgot that they were here in Durango, so I need to reach out to them.
Well, they're
and go see them.
They're up near the ski resort.
Yeah, something to pee.
So they're maybe an hour away. Purgatory.
Yeah.
They're by Lake Purgatory.
Yeah.
Tiny little lake.
Oh yeah.
They got a spot on the lake, I think.
Yeah.
Dang.
And I want to say it's just him and the 3 boys. Tristan is off to military, Navy, something, right?
Something. Yeah.
Anyways, we haven't talked to them in a while either. So if you see them wandering around, say hi to them for us.
Yeah, I definitely will. I know I need to reach out to them because my mom, mom and dad were talking about that. They were like, oh yeah, Nathan and Renee are in that area, so you definitely have to see them. And I haven't seen them in, God, I don't know how long it's been, 10-something years maybe, I can't remember, but a long time.
It's been a while for us too. I want to say for us it's been since 2018.
Yeah.
Right?
Dang.
So 6 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang. Well, and that's such a cool thing about this kind of lifestyle is traveling on the road and all that is you're kind of used to that, and it goes by quick, but then you can kind of just with certain people you can just reconnect like nothing's ever no time's passed kind of thing.
For sure. I mean,
it's a trip.
because living on the road, when you meet people and you travel with them, you get so close so quickly, right? Because it's not like meeting a friend in school or work where you hang out with them for a couple hours a day and then you don't see them for 3 days over the weekend, and you do a couple more hours each day, Monday through Friday. Camping with somebody on the road, it's 24/7. If you're with them for 2 weeks, that's like months worth of normal friendship packed into one short time. So yeah,
Oh,
you get
yeah.
close really fast.
Well, and it's the kind of thing where it's like, hey, I just met you at this coffee shop. You want to go 40 miles into the desert with no cell service and go camping? And,
and you probably have knives and
totally
guns in your truck.
Yep, you probably have knives, guns, whatever. I don't care, man. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's the amount of people you meet on the road and how quickly you become close to them is really awesome. That's something
sure.
I'm glad to be in this area because I have a lot of friends that still do come through this area, and it's still very, like, accommodates that travel kind of aspect. A lot of people come to the Southwest, for this area, and I'm really lucky that I get to live in a place that people vacation to. I go to Telluride all the time just for lunch sometimes, and I'm like, people come from all over the world to go to Telluride. This is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and it's not cheap to go there for most people.
No, it is not. So where are you guys? You guys are like in Colombia or something?
Yeah, so we've been in Cartagena for almost going on 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
We shipped down here from Panama about 3 weeks ago, and our van made it actually fairly quickly. So we've had our van for maybe a week and a half, but we had to put our lithium batteries into a container and ship it separately because the shipping company we used didn't allow it in our van, so that got delayed. So we're hoping, we've been tracking it, we're hoping that ship that the battery is on is pulling into port, like, as we speak.
Yeah, right now. We were
like,
going to try to look
right
for
now.
it. Yeah, and take a photo of the ship, but we couldn't find it.
So we're hoping
that
to
would be
start,
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're hoping to get back in the van and start heading south from here, like, Saturday is the plan.
So.
Okay,
itching.
where's kind of final destination? Where you got? How far south?
We have, we'd love to go to Antarctica, but that's buku bucks, so we don't.
We can't afford
that. That would be awesome.
We can't afford
that.
That
would be
but
awesome.
We'll get as close as we can without getting wet.
That's a good call right there.
we
Man,
may
I've
get
always
wet.
wanted
We
to
may
do
get a
that.
little wet. We may get a little wet.
You're gonna
But
get a
we'll
little
see.
wet down in South America. Yeah, you're gonna get a little wet. Man, that's like I've been watching your guys' stories, and I just, like, as much as I've fallen in love with Baja, I just want to keep going, and so just keep going south and put the truck on a ferry or something like that. Ideally, what I'd love to do is drive the peninsula again, ferry over from La Paz to Mazatlan, and then cruise down there to Central America area. Has always been incredibly high on my list. And then eventually, what I want to do is like put a sailboat in the Sea of Cortez, and then kind of bop back and forth down the mainland and Baja, and then sail all the way down to Central America, and then go up through the Panama Canal, and then up the Yucatan Peninsula back into Texas or Florida or something like that. That's a big dream of mine.
Yeah, that looks super fun. In fact, I was just watching a video of a couple doing that in their catamaran, and we were
nice.
just there. We were just on the side of the Panama Canal watching ships go by. So it's like
That's
super
awesome.
tangible in our minds right now, like what that experience might be like.
It would be quite an experience, especially to, I don't know, just that much sailing, that much water. It's something I've been obsessed with since I was a kid. So
that's definitely a different adventure all in itself. Crossing the canal, and for us, I've always been into sailing. Also, it's just, I'm not a guy that gets to make his own decisions all by myself anymore. Those days have long passed.
Motorcycle and a sailing intervention.
But what I've decided over the years is that there's a lot to see by land, and we've gotten really close to, like, while we're in Europe, we actually, for a couple of winters, we're like, let's go look at boats, and then we chartered a sailboat 3 different times for a week at a time in the Adriatic, and everybody got experience. Like, while we were on it, the kids got really into it. So after a couple of those times, like, we seriously considered, like, getting a boat and switching. But ultimately, I think what it came down to for us is just that you're committing to a specific type of travel and visiting specific types of places more so than you are traveling by land, right? It's much more difficult in a sailboat to go see places inland. That becomes
Yeah.
like a big ordeal.
But I like your plan of leaving the boat and then going back to land for a while and
Yeah.
then going back to the boat so you can have the best of both worlds.
That's the thing. You want to have the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And, you know, for a boat that we can all fit in and a vehicle that we can all fit in,
yeah.
you know, it's a big
That's
investment. But at the same time,
that's a big investment.
Like one of our kids will soon fly the nest, right? So just like you guys all did, one day we're going to be like we're going to be like Greg and Jen.
Well, we should go start from the beginning.
Yeah, so okay. Let's start from the top. You know, we have some questions that we laid out, and this is just pretty casual conversation, and we know a lot about you guys, but I don't know if we've ever like spoken really in depth about, you know, your particular experiences, and also you specifically, right? You know, we've gone camping with your parents. I think we last saw them in the Badlands in South Dakota in 2017.
Probably.
Oh yeah.
And you know, we wanted to kind of get to all the way back to the beginning for you. Like, we want to, since we have 3 kids also, and our oldest is going to be a senior this coming year, and we're seeing a lot of the things that she's experiencing, like going to be soon graduating high school, moving on, you know, doing things on her own. She's never done that, and you know, you kind of have this perspective that, like, it's really convenient for us to pick your brains, pick your brains on. So
I love it.
What do you? Yeah. So, you know, kind of give us your thoughts on. Let's start with like your earliest memories of living on the road with your parents. Like, what was that like? Do you remember those decisions that your parents made? I know that your dad was working for Dell back in the day. Was your mom also, or was it just your dad?
Just my dad. Yeah, it was just my dad. My mom was kind of the stay-at-home mom kind of thing, because it was very typical, you know, early 2000s, kind of late 90s corporate family lifestyle structure. Mom stays at home with the kids. Kesley, you know, me and Kesley were of, you know, school age essentially, and Sonny was kind of just at home with my mom. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess from the beginning, as it's, you know, obviously you guys know
How
a lot
old
of
were
the
you
story,
guys
but a
during
lot of
this
viewers,
time?
I would have been, when we left on the road, I would have been about 9.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have been about 9. Kesley and Sonny were 6, 7-ish, something like that.
Okay.
And yeah, because it basically started as, like I said, you guys know, a lot of viewers wouldn't know, or listeners wouldn't know, but like my dad would, you know, we grew up in Austin, and they moved us to Seattle in the late 90s, and it was back and forth for my dad. It was from Seattle to Austin, and it was just, all right, fly down there for 3 days, go, you know, do the meetings and fly back. And my dad basically, you know, we just loved being together as a family, and so we started taking those road trips between Seattle and Austin, and just fell in love with those times. And so that's where my dad's kind of epiphany really happened, was, all right, I'm at the top. I got, you know, making a ton of money. I'm making, you know, doing the, you know, white picket fence American dream kind of stuff. And we just found out that we fell in love more and more with the road time in between, because we were closer as a family. And it was something that was not being done before. I mean, it was being done, but it wasn't being really like publicized.
No.
And you didn't have van life, and you didn't have truck life, and you didn't have, you know, families living on the road and all that kind of stuff. And so after
this was
kind of
90, early
parents,
90s, early or mid 90s.
We moved from Austin to Seattle in 98, and then when we sold everything and hit the road, it was 2001. It was May 18th, 2001, when we finally hit the road in the RV. Which it's like 4 days away.
Yeah. So you guys survived Y2K, and then your dad's like,
we survived Y2K.
You know,
did all that.
Right. Better time, better
Literally,
now than ever, before some other
system.
disaster happens. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He used the glitch in the system because he's a tech guy, so he took out millions of dollars for us. No.
Right.
But
it's like Office Space, one penny, fractions of a penny at a time.
There's a lot of fractions, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I do remember a little bit of it, and I was the oldest, obviously. And so I was able to kind of comprehend a little bit of what we were doing, not as much. I basically was like, cool, we're going on a long vacation. I'll come back and see my friends. We're going on a long vacation, right? And then my parents are like, no, like we're going, like we don't know where we're gonna go. And as much as a 9-year-old, 10-year-old brain could comprehend that was, but what about my friends? Like, what about the people at school and all this? And I remember though, I had always been the kid that really enjoyed the travel. Though I really enjoyed, I had no problem making friends. Was it was not scary to me, at least. And I remember, like, once we started going, I just really got into the groove of it because I was such a nerd. I loved museums. I loved, like being in national parks and being outdoors and all that. So to me, it was just a really extended vacation. And as I got older, I think once we started getting like the schooling kind of aspect, I started really realizing, okay, this is something totally different. This is something that is going to be a completely different experience. And I don't think it really hit me until I was, 10, 11, 12 or whatever, when we started going back to Seattle. And then all my friends were in the same school, in the same homes, doing the same thing with the same friends. And they had grown up that way. And they had grown up and they started having all of these, oh, remember when so-and-so did this, and remember this party, and remember this fun thing, and remember this soccer game. And I started, as I started growing older, 14, 15 years old, I started like kind of missing out on that. And I was like, well, where's my social experience? Where's my friends that I didn't know? I make these, like we just talked about, is I made these really good friends on the road, and then you leave 4 days and you don't know when you're going to see them again. And I remember when I started getting, mid-teens or, late teens and stuff, where I really was like more interested in having friends, and I didn't want to be around my family all the time. You go through this kind of rebellious teenage phase, and I'm trying to find myself and all this kind of things. And as I remember, as I started getting a little bit more conscientious of what we were doing, where we were going, I started noticing the hardships too that were kind of loaded onto my parents as young parents that were taking their kids on the road at a time when that was not socially acceptable. So a lot of a lot of extended family turned their backs on them. And you started noticing comments that people started making in public, like thinking we were homeless. And we're like, oh, yeah, I mean, technically we're homeless in, your eyes, but no, we're like totally happy and we're fine. And then they started like giving us $20 and we're like, well, we'll take $20, but we don't need it. But then it did get to,
I'll turn away $1 and I've turned away dollar bills. But if it was a 20, anything bigger than a 20, I'm taking, right?
Hey,
whether I need it or not.
Every man has their price.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's my price. $20.
That's my price.
And we were never offered $20. We were offered like $1 or $2 here and there.
I think we were probably offered $1 or $2 here or something like that. Or like, hey, do you guys need a place to shower or whatever? We're like, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds better than the Flying J down the road.
Yeah, right.
So I really started noticing more of it, and it started kind of getting heavy on me. Was, obviously wanting to continue traveling, do all this kind of stuff, but then also wanting to stop and like have high school friends, have the high school experience, whatever. So I remember we did stop in Austin for a lot longer. We stayed put kind of thing for around, I think I was like 16 maybe or something like that. And I started going to high school parties and, friends that I'd had there. And I started going to high school football games and everything. I was basically going to high school without going to class. So it's kind of like a high school dropout, basically.
So when you guys went back to Austin, this is during the coffee shop time, right?
Yes, this was kind of around coffee shop time. So I want to say, it was like 16, 17. It all kind of blurs together because then I was like, wait, I think I remember being 17 in Seattle, but I don't know. But yeah, so around the coffee shop time is, well, I guess to lead into that was, education was still a really important thing from our parents. And so we did the whole homeschool thing. We did the whole curriculum, all that kind of stuff. And then we were like, this is dumb. You guys don't need to waste your time learning trigonometry and all this kind of stuff. We're going to teach you the stuff on the road and through real education, basically. So we threw a lot of that out. And when it came time to get the coffee shop, that was a big learning experience that my parents wanted Kesley, Sonny, and I to be very hands-on with. And so I helped run a lot of the coffee shop. I helped, rebuild the espresso machine, learn the roasting. I was in charge of all that. Kesley's in charge of a lot of the front-end stuff, her and Sonny. So it was really cool. And at the time, I'm battling a lot of stuff in my and myself as a growing teenager of just like, I want friends, I want all this kind of stuff, but I can't stay out too late because I got to be up at 4 a.m. to open the coffee shop. And but also like kind of trying to like fit in with people that I didn't really fit in with, because I had just grown up with all of this life experience on the road and talking with people that were 10 years old versus 80 years old, you know, and just having all of these different life experiences. And I realized that I couldn't relate. I was trying really hard to relate to other kids my age because I wanted that. I wanted the teenage experience. I wanted all that. I wanted the dates. I wanted the, you know, I wanted the parties, and I wanted all this kind of stuff. But I just,
you got hormones
I felt
coursing
like
through your body.
Dude, seriously, I was like, oh, come on, man. Like, yeah, I got hormones and everything. Come on. And I remember it just felt like swimming upstream my own river. And I just could not, I could not relate to anybody no matter how hard I tried. And what happened is it made me feel like such an outcast. And it made me feel like, well, why am I the weird one? Why am I, you know, why does nobody relate to me? All my references, my jokes, my history, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, dude, Austin, you're 16 talking like you're a 30-year-old. Like, what the fuck?
Right.
And
that's really interesting because I think that's when that's our first interaction. That's when we met you guys, is when your dad knew that we were coming through Texas and invited us to come by the coffee shop. And I think it was you, your dad, maybe your mom and Kesley. I don't know if Sonny was there. I think it was maybe the 4 of you there, and I think that was the first time we met your dad also, right? And I want to say that would have been 2010?
I don't know.
2010 or 2012. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it was 20, because we sold the coffee shop and then moved, and we moved from Texas to Oregon in 2013. It was mid-2013. Okay. So, yeah, 2012, 2011-ish maybe.
Maybe 2011, yeah.
Or 2010.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's it. I find it super interesting to hear your perspective on this, because my perspective, I mean, for those of you who are listening that don't know what we're talking about, your parents bought this coffee shop in Austin, Texas, when you guys moved back there, with the intention of you guys running it as a family, with the intention of you guys learning like real world experiences of running a business that was more practical as like basically a high school education than it was to just like go to school. And that's kind of what you're referring to, is like this was your high school basically, but you still had friends outside of it.
Yeah.
But I never knew this perspective of you feeling this frustration, is because like you did have a completely different experience than all these other kids that are your age that you're now hanging out with.
Yeah. Yeah, it was wild because, go ahead.
I mean, in retrospect, do you still think that was the thing that you would do again if you had a choice? Or would you have rather gone back to Austin and like enrolled in school?
No, I actually think I would have. Now, I really wish I would have leaned more into the business. I really wish I would have leaned. Yeah. And so, well, and it's like, you know, when you're that age, you're dealing with so many different emotions and growing up and thinking who, you know, having these ideas of who you wanted to be. And, you know, for a long time, like around that age is kind of when I found climbing. And I was, you know,
and slacklining and all that stuff. Yep.
And I found slacklining and I found highlining. And basically what happened there was I got really good at it really fast, and I got really strong because my metabolism is through the roof. I'm like climbing all the time, and
those hormones.
And I started those hormones, man. And I got so good, and I was climbing 6 days a week. I found some sort of identity in it because I got really recognized for, dude, Austin's really strong. This is awesome. And so I started clinging to that because what else am I going to do? You know, I was like, I don't know who I am. Okay, maybe I'm a climber because I'm getting all this attention, and that must be good. That must be a really good sign. And so I leaned into it really heavy. And I've always struggled with ego in my own way. And when you have a lot of people looking at you for being a really strong climber, you're in one of the best physical shapes you've ever been in and whatnot, dude, it goes to your head so much. And so I went through this real weird phase of like, okay, I want to be a professional climber for a long time, and just honestly turned into a douchebag. And it was really great, and I got, went through some humbling times with it, and that's when I really started finding photography, because through all of my own, I wanted to be a professional climber, I wanted to be a professional highliner, I wanted to be a professional surfer, and every single time that I had, gone through some of these activities or chapters of my life, it was a lot of my parents were saying, Austin, you really need to focus on this photography thing. Like, you're really good at it and you keep doing it. And I was like, no, I don't want to be known as a photographer. That's lame. I remember specifically saying it's lame.
Wow.
And it was interesting because I went through kind of a humble experience when I was like later teens, 18, 19 or something. And I kind of just started really growing up and really being introspective to myself, and found that I was hanging around just people that I just didn't relate to. I was like, who the hell am I right now? Like, I'm just, again, swimming upstream and all this kind of stuff, and I was really struggling with my childhood. I was really struggling with, not struggling in a bad way, but just being like, I just had this massive, crazy childhood that nobody has. And I feel totally different than my peers. So like, who are my peers? Who are my people? And through that, I kind of started finding photography and really enjoying the process and the people that it introduced me to. And so kind of basically was just like, all right, I'll lean into this. Let's lean into this and see who this meets me.
Tell us about, how did you find photography? Like, was there a moment where you realized, like, was it through some recognition, or is it just through joy of like doing the activity? Like, what was the moment where you realized that?
That's a good question, because I think it was a lot of little moments that really ended up. I didn't have some crazy big epiphany kind of thing like my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, he'd even be the first to say, no, it was a lot of little moments that kind of led up to, oh, I'm kind of just doing this already. It just is it felt like it just kind of fell into my lap, but it really is a lot of little moments. And I started noticing that, through a lot of my different activities that I had done, is photography was the one that I found that I felt the most comfortable in myself in. So when I really started leaning into saying, yes, I am a photographer, yes, I am this person, and it helped shape my identity, I really started noticing, oh, wow, I can do all these same things that I love while being a professional at the thing that I really, truly love. And I had kind of a photography mentor, was Greg Davis, is one of our family friends down in Austin. He's really professional Nat Geo photographer, shooter guy. And so I started watching him, and I started hearing about his trips, and I was like, wait, I could get paid to do the things that I love to do while shooting the stuff that I love and enjoying it. And so he really helped me kind of coach me through a lot of that and how that worked and everything. And I think it was kind of after like really seeing him, flying in helicopters over Papua New Guinea and shooting volcanoes and all this kind of crazy stuff that he had done, I was like, whoa, okay, here's something. This is great. Yeah. And the more I started leaning into that, the universe just kind of kept rewarding me with that kind of stuff, just getting better. And really, I noticed that I was like, I don't really care to climb a bigger route. I don't care to walk a bigger highline, but I do care how to take a better photo. Or I do care about really what it is for me. And this could be a whole other conversation about photography and the principles behind it for me. Is it's not always about taking a technically great photo. It's about the experiences that photo allows you to have. And it's about the people that photo captures, and the ways that you can kind of connect with those people. And I started really loving that, because I'm a big people person. I love talking, I love hearing stories, and I love sharing that. But then like the joy that I see on people's face when I show them a photo I take of them, or, doing something that they love, I get so much more joy from that instead of taking some beautiful landscape photo by myself. That's why I really have a lot of subjects in my photos. Or I like to shoot with people, because that's where I find a lot of the enjoyment, really.
Were you doing this while you were young, traveling on the road with your family already? Or who was the person documenting most of this stuff when you were on the road with your family back in the day? Like, how did you get inspired?
It was a good mix.
Yeah.
I think it was like a lot of it. If I really think about it, so my dad always had a camera on him. He always had a video camera on him, and he was always filming everything. And that's why we have our entire childhood as like an office documentary, is kind of what I say.
It's like a dad cam.
He always made fun of him.
Right.
It was total dad cam, right?
Did he coin the phrase dad cam? Is he like the spokesperson for the dad cam movement?
He absolutely should. You know, because you remember photos of my dad, long hair,
Oh yeah.
goatee, do-rag sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, he looked like a dad. He, like, had, I mean, it was hilarious. He looked like a heavy metal motorcycle dad sometimes, too. And so I think I just kept seeing him filming and all this kind of stuff. And I was just always the kid who, like, Dad, can I have the camera? Dad, I want to film. I
Oh
want to
yeah.
film. And he's like,
Right.
Austin, shut up. Like, please, God, just, okay, here, take it. And I remember, like, specifically, my dad was, like, kind of going through some photos one time, a long time ago when I was younger, and he was like, "Who took this photo? Like, this is really great." And I was just over here, like, that was me. I was just, like, playing around with a photo of a leaf, like, whatever. And so it kind of started there, and I don't know. It was just something that really, I just always, it was natural for me to just have a camera in my hand. I don't know. It's hard to explain, you know, like when you just find something that you're like, I don't know. I just always have a camera. I love taking photos and capturing these moments. And I loved kind of remembering them, like we talked about at the start of our conversation, is, you know, years from now when they dig us up or whatever, you know, I loved contributing my part to that. And I loved contributing to the family story. And I think a lot of that probably came subconsciously, now that I even think about it, is a lot of that came from just watching my dad, you know, as a father figure, just documenting his family and the love that he had for his family. And I think I really subconsciously just kind of attached to that because I've always been a family man, and I've always been, you know, very caring about the people that I keep around me. And I think I probably just kind of saw that as my father was, like, documenting his family and being really proud of the risks and the, you know, the things that he had taken. And even though he's, you know, him and my mom are scared shitless and stuff like that, during that, they never let it show. And I think I was just really attracted to that idea subconsciously.
How do you describe your sort of photography style now? I mean, from the sound of it and from the stuff that we've seen you do, it's a mixture of, like, it's like outdoors brand photography and also like maybe a little photojournalism. Would you
Yeah.
characterize it as that, or do you have other sort of process that you go through when you pursue it?
Yeah, I kind of step in. So, like, I say that I've been a professional photographer now for close to 10 years. You know, off and on, and more so, I think, you know, half and half is just kind of been for work stuff, but then for personal things. And over those years, I've really tried to hone in kind of my style. I've done so many different styles of shoots. I've done, you know, the crazy adventure stuff, and I've done real estate, I've done weddings, I've done product photography, I've done dog photography, I've done food things, and, you know, kind of anything to really kind of pay the bills and buy the next camera. But I think through all of that, I was trying to really hone in my style and, like, who am I? You know, who am I as a photographer? So when a lot of this kind of came up for me as I really started asking these questions, when social media started becoming huge, and I started, you know, building followings on social media, and everybody wanted to be a photographer all of a sudden. Everybody was like, I'm an outdoor adventure photographer. And lately it's kind of been, you know, okay, this photography thing is really accessible to a lot of people now. And anybody can go out, buy big cameras, do a couple filters on Lightroom, and, you know, pose at tunnel view and get the same shot everybody else has gotten. So I hate to say it, but, like, photography,
it's probably,
you know,
harder than
has not
ever
become,
to kind of,
it is,
be
and so
successful as a photographer.
it is 100%. And so as I was growing, you know, kind of riding the social media boom and just kind of taking these photos, I started really trying to figure out, wait, everybody can basically take the same photo now. You know, it's not really unique anymore. How do you make it unique? And I think a lot of that I started looking back into is, who am I as a person behind the camera? You know, instead of using the camera as the tool, use myself as a tool of saying, you know, you're not selling, when you're selling a photography thing, you're not selling the photos, you're not selling the camera, you're not selling the project, you're selling yourself, really, is what it is. Can I work with this guy? Can I trust this guy? Can I put this person in any sort of situation and he's going to come up with something great, trusting instincts or whatever. So as far as, like, I don't know, it is a really interesting way, because people have tried to ask me, what do I consider myself? Do I consider myself an adventure photographer, a photojournalist, all this? And I just really kind of, I don't really have a exact answer, but yeah, I mean, you basically hit it, as photojournalism, adventure photography, and really just kind of trying to stay away from capturing what everybody else captures, and really trying to show the emotions of
Trying to
people
find
around
something
me.
unique and different.
Yeah, and not really worrying about, oh shoot, I have to get the solar eclipse because I'm like, I don't really care to shoot that. It doesn't do anything for me. What things do for me is like one of my recent favorite photos is one of the things I was down in Texas and I was visiting down there, and it was one of the first times I'd seen my grandpa in a long time. And I had uploaded it recently on Instagram. I don't know if you guys saw it, but he's sitting on the couch doing this, and his fingers are crossed just like this. And I just got right about here, and I just took this photo of his hands, and they're all beat up, and they're all, it's shallow, it's just colorful, and you see the texture on his hands. And I thought to myself, like, I've grown up with this man my entire life, and I've never shot a photo of his hands. I've never looked at his hands. I've never thought the stories that his hands have told. Or like I captured a bunch of video that actually ended up being some of the last video of my grandma before she passed this recent December. And I was like, how cool is it that I have this footage now that I can share with my family, shot on a really nice cine camera that's, almost making a documentary of our life. And so it was that really kind of, I don't know what to call that. Just an observer of, whatever cliche you want to. I'm an observer of stories and capture moments and blah, blah, blah.
Well, I do believe that, like you said, when you go out there and try to get a job as a photographer, you're selling you as the person behind the camera. Yeah. But really, on top of that, beyond that is what kind of stories can you tell? It's not just, well, that's a beautiful photo. Is that this photo tells a story, and you become a storyteller. And you, as a storyteller, the tool that you've chosen to use as a storyteller, rather than a computer or a pen, it's a camera, right? Whether you're shooting photos or shooting video, you're trying to tell a story in the way that you, as a creative person, best can represent. And along with that, like, do you feel that way? Like, do you consider yourself as like a storyteller? And if you do, like, do you have ambitions on what other ways you might want to tell stories that you come across in your life?
That's a great question. Absolutely. I think it's just kind of this, I always have loved stories. Ever since I was a kid, I loved movies. I love, I was never really a reader, because I just didn't really have the patience to sit down
Free
and read
Willy, Kindergarten Cop, and what other movies are shot in Astoria?
Free Willy, Kindergarten Cop, The Ring.
Goonies.
Goonies? Of course, Goonies.
Shit,
of course. How could we forget that one?
Oh my God.
End of Dexter. The end of Dexter.
Wow, really?
Yep. Short Circuit, that's a great one. But no, I always love the way of telling stories. So I've always considered myself a bit of a storyteller in a very different way. Is I get really, as you guys can probably tell, I get really passionate about stories, and I like want to talk more and to go into. I love going into detail of that and making you feel like you were there. And I think that's so important with storytelling, is, not just telling the story, but then telling all of these little things of, remember how the air felt, remember how the weather was, all the little details the person was wearing, whatever. And I've been able, I think, to do that enough through photography. And so my next kind of thing is I really want to work into more short films and documentary style stuff. Is I really want to pursue that with video, because like I was talking about, is photography unfortunately has become less unique these days. And I don't want to go to Tunnel View at Yosemite or the Grand Tetons or all these places and shoot the same photo that's been taken, or just be like, I have to have it in my arsenal. It's like, no, like, talk about more of the stories that surround Tunnel View, the trip leading up to Tunnel View, the trip past that, that kind of stuff. That I feel like is a more obtainable action style of photography. Is what can not everybody can relate to sunrise at Tunnel View or sunrise at the Grand Tetons because they've never seen it. What they can relate to, though, is the car ride to get there, the excitement the night before, the smile after the photo, the smile after the backflip they did off the ski jump, blah, blah, blah. That's what everybody can relate to. And I think being a good storyteller is something that is still unique in the sense is some people can take an amazing photo, but there's not a big story to back it. And there's, good and bads in both of that, of course, it doesn't mean that you're less of a creative person at all. But to sit down and connect with somebody, to pull emotions from somebody and to relate, a completely different story to somebody's life and have them feel something that says, wow, I relate to that, to this one other thing in my life, is a really unique talent, and something that I really hope to grow and nourish as I get older. And especially because a lot of people do look at a lot of, my childhood, my way of growing up is very unique. So I have a lot of unique perspectives on it. So I think, like, whether I like it or not, I have to be a storyteller,
Yeah,
so I might as well just
for
lean
sure.
into it, the best I can. And I've had a lot of friends ask me, a lot of, peers ask me, or just people on Instagram, they message, how do I do this? How do I become a photographer? How do I'm taking my kids on the road for the first time. How do I do this? What's your perspective as the oldest son of the Bare Naked family? What was your perspective? And, I find myself giving, now that I'm in my 30s, I'm giving a lot of parents advice of, like, here's how it was for an older teenager to live on the road, and here's all these things that I learned, and here's how I would personally do it differently if I ever have kids. And it's really fascinating, growing up into it, and you just kind of take it for granted while it's there. And then now, as you grow older, you start really realizing, as an adult, I'm paying bills, I'm learning phone bills, I'm learning, insurance, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, Mom, Dad, you guys were like early 20s when you were doing this with 3 kids on the road? What the hell? Like, this is impressive. And so you start relating and having these adult conversations with your parents now, where they can really break down and share the emotions of, like, Austin, we were scared. Like, we were broke. Like, I don't know if like, we were like pushing off telemarketer. Like, we were, our phones were shut off this time. We were trying to figure it out. And so it's really wild to grow up now and hear these stories as a emerging storyteller myself, hearing these stories from people that you thought had it together their entire lives, and they're kind of letting their walls down and saying, no, we didn't have it together. We were piecing it together as we went.
Right.
And meanwhile, I'm over there like, oh, look at these rocks. This is cool. And my parents are like freaking out, like, oh my God, how are we going to fill up the gas tank and whatnot? But they love that of, even though
but it was like
$1.50
a gallon back then.
God, I know. And I was like, oh, I'm just probably thinking about doing what we're doing now, I mean, you guys like filling that big thing up,
Oh man.
And man, some of my favorite memories are just those ones, and hearing my parents talk about, we were scared shitless and we didn't know what we were going to do. Yeah. But here we are in Zion National Park. Here we are,
more relatable,
beautiful
as you get older,
areas,
for sure.
Totally. And that I just recently had this conversation with my dad, just kind of father to son conversations. And I was like, we were talking a lot about this. And I was like, Dad, I relate to it so much more now. I relate to, not everything, but I can definitely understand a little bit more of what you guys were going through, and how hard that must have been. And it's been really cool, I think, for them to share that perspective with their kids now that they're older, and we can all sit down, have a beer and talk about it, and be like, yeah, this was really scary. So yeah, it's wild. And so it's great watching other families growing up through that and doing it. And it's also wildly interesting to see it now becoming socially more acceptable, as to where, instead of, when it was us doing it in the early 2000s, they're like, oh my God, you live in an RV, are you guys okay? Versus nowadays it's, oh my God, you guys live in a van traveling through Colombia and doing all the central, that's so cool, I'm going to follow you guys, and you guys built this amazing following.
I would even say that it's become too acceptable.
I would argue that too. That's a great, oh man, yeah, that's a great way to segue into, like, another aspect of it is, people romanticize this kind of life, and they romanticize van life, and they romanticize dropping everything and just working on the road and blah blah blah. And I'm like, guys, living in a house is awesome. Having a steady job is awesome. I tell this to a lot of friends, and a lot of people on Instagram, is I love having salary jobs. I love having a paycheck that I know exactly when it's coming in and exactly where it is. And,
stability.
And with stability. And when you're on the road, yeah, it's awesome. It frees you up for a lot. But there will come a time where you're like, God, I don't want to deal with the van right now. I don't want to deal with finding a spot. God, I don't want to deal with our composting toilet. I just want to, shower in one spot. I just want to be in one spot. And I think just learning to find that balance, figuring out what works really well for you guys, and not comparing yourselves to social media and online. And I've told this to many people, is don't compare yourselves to me. Don't compare yourselves to my family and what we did. Find out what works for your family, and just talk to your kids openly and say, do you guys want this high school experience? Okay, cool. We're going to go settle in Austin and let you have that and let you decide for yourself. And I think it's one of the best gifts that my family ever gave me was the choice to say, yes, mom and dad, I need this high school experience. I want to go out there and try this. And that was
so
wildly
that was
good.
a choice that you guys got to make. Well, I mean, what was that choice like?
Yeah,
was
to
it
a degree.
like a family vote, or was it halfway determined already, and they just kind of get your buy-in, or how? I mean, that was a long time ago, so I don't know how clearly you remember that, because that's what we do often with our kids. We ask them couple times a year if they still want to do this. And at this point it's a little bit different, because at this point this is all they know, so they can't really picture themselves doing something else. So this has kind of become sort of autopilot. If we don't do this, what else are we going to do, kind of thing, right? So for you guys at the time, you guys had a choice, and you guys were the ones that told your parents, I want to have some kind of high school experience. Is that why you guys stopped?
Yeah, we were able to definitely. It was really important for all 5 of us to have a say in where we went, what we did. And obviously at the end of the day, the parents are going to make the best decisions for their family, because, I'm 14 and don't know, everything. But they definitely took that into consideration as saying, wow, Austin's going through this time where he really wants this. Let's make sure he has this the best he can. And let's make sure that...
How did your sisters feel at the time? Do you remember?
Not as much. I remember they were kind of a little bit more along for the ride because they were just younger. They didn't really understand it as much. I definitely remember, though, as they grew older and as they got into their teenage years, they started having a lot of the same feelings. I remember Sunny, as the youngest, she has always been... Kesley and I have always been somewhat nomadic, and able to just kind of adapt to that. Sunny has always been our rock, in the sense of she wants to settle down. She wants to have the family in one city, and we come over for Sunday dinners and do that kind of stuff. And Kesley and I have gotten a lot more to that point now. But going through my 20s, I was like, dude, I can't sit still. I want to be somewhere else. And Sunny, growing up, she definitely had a harder time with leaving friends and leaving, going from Austin to Seattle to California, wherever it was. She really wanted that stability. And I think that's when my parents started really realizing, especially when we moved to Astoria, is, okay, this is coming to an end. Bare Naked Family is coming to an end to a degree of this chapter. And that was really, really weird to watch my parents go through that, because kind of like what you guys were saying, is the oldest is going to fly the nest at some point soon. I will tell you, it drastically changes, because you've spent so much time with your best friends, your kids. They're your, you've watched them grow, and that's all they've known, and that's all you've known. So I remember even when my parents went through an empty nest stage, Kesley, Sunny, and I went through our empty nest stage to a degree. We had identity crisis of, oh my God, I'm living on my own. I don't have my parents. I don't have my siblings with me. What is going on? And there was... Can we
put you on Ava's speed dial next year when she goes to college?
Ava can reach out to me anytime, because absolutely.
Because this is something that we're really having a difficult time picturing, what that may look like for us and for her. Is she going to be going to school somewhere, and she's going to look out her dorm window, and there's going to be us in a van just stalking from under a tree?
Do you guys have...
Or is she going to be in the van together? Right. When is the RA not there, so we can go in there and shower?
Yeah, exactly. It'll be interesting for sure. I remember that I felt this enormous amount of freedom. Enormous amount of freedom of just cool, I'm away from my parents and I'm away from my family, and this is great, and blah, blah, blah. And I could really start finding myself. And it was really important for all of us to go through that, as much as it hurt and as much as it was hard for us to let go. Because don't get me wrong, it's, Ava will have her own experience of, oh my God, I'm having all this freedom. This is great, blah, blah. I miss my family. Man, I miss that time I was in Colombia. Man. And she'll come to a point where she will realize how special of a childhood you guys gave her. And... it might go through that kind of thing where, like myself, is I kind of just went dog off leash, and I was just like, I want to do it all on my own. I don't want to get my parents' advice. I need to have this self-reliance kind of thing, and it always comes back around. Kids always come back to their parents, especially if they've had such a good childhood.
When you left to go out on your own, did you find it challenging, like financially? I mean, that's the thing that I worry about my kids is that, they, unlike you guys running a coffee shop and kind of getting to know like the nitty gritty of running a business, our kids won't have that. So I find that I'm scared for them, for them to go out on their own. And I'm also scared for like how much I'm going to have to continue to support them. At what point are you completely self-sufficient on your own? And was that something you felt like you had to do at an earlier age than people your age? Or did you find your experience help you kind of succeed in that?
I felt like it both helped and didn't help. Because I think growing up, I had such a carefree life where I was just like, dude, I can grab $1,000 and live off that for, 2-3 months, whatever. That's awesome.
You got your health. You just have to eat, and you can sleep anywhere. Your back doesn't hurt.
Feed myself and eat. So that's a really
or maybe your back hurt from all the
something
climbing
I hadn't
you
really
did.
thought about. Maybe the back hurt from that, and just other random crap I've done to myself, and all the fake falling that my parents taught me how to do. We loved pranking people when I was young because I was really into Jackass when I was like 13. So,
oh man,
yeah, that's a whole other story. But no, so like my dad and I actually again were just talking about this, and he was talking about a lot of the concerns that you were just explaining, Dan. Is what if I didn't, what if I didn't set my kids up enough to be successful in the real world? What if I, because when my dad left, we had millions of dollars of stock options and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I could have set you guys up with cars, and I could have set, very typical story of just, pay for your college, pay for this and set you up and give you this, business knowledge. And the way that I explained it to him was I was like, Dad, sure, you didn't set us up financially necessarily to like the way that you would have wanted or the ways that the world sees it.
That's okay.
We're not trust funders, blah blah blah. But I was like, Dad, what you taught me to do though was go out there and experience the world, experience people. And again, you're not selling your job; you're selling yourself. And I think that because I'm not even with my photography business now. There's still things in taxes that I'm learning how to do at 31 years old, and I'm like, hey, Dad,
I'm 48 and I'm learning how to do some taxes.
Exactly.
I mean, I filed an extension again this year.
Okay, so I'm not alone. No, what I think is I told my parents was I was like, sure, yeah, you didn't set us up financially. I didn't. I look at a lot of other friends where they had 6 months to just go travel the world out of a backpack because they were taken care of by their family and blah blah blah, and they bought a brand new car and blah blah blah. But what my parents taught me and gave me was the confidence to say, I've been around the world. I know this really well. And I know how to just ask questions. And the biggest thing was I learned how to say, I don't know, because that taught me, okay, I don't know. How do I go and learn that? That was really like the best thing that my parents gave me was the, I don't know attitude, but I will figure it out. And a lot of my 20s was just figuring it out. A lot of my 30s is going to be just figuring it out. How do I buy a house, Dad? I don't know. I was just literally on the phone with them like 48 hours ago about this. And so I wouldn't worry too much about that because it's what this kind of lifestyle gives me is the confidence to say I have two of the best people right here to ask any of the questions that I know. And I know that they're going to be relatable to say, I'm 48 and still filing an extension for my taxes. So like, I don't have it all figured out. Let's figure it out together. And it brings this comfortability of just like, okay, I got this. Okay. I'm going to be good. And I think that through all of our travels, through all of our things, through all of our successes and failures and everything was you can go out and succeed and you can go out and fail 10 times more, but that, you don't learn anything from success. You learn everything by failing. And my parents taught me that it was okay to do that. It's okay to fail, And if you're handed everything in your life, a trust fund, a blah, 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 you're not going to learn how to hustle. You're not going to learn how to talk to people and to sell yourself and to learn what it's like to have, $20 in your checking account versus, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you're like, dude, I just don't care, whatever. I'm just going to buy whatever I want.
Yeah.
My parents
this is literally what I say all day, every day, is when I tell the kids, let's learn how to do this. And then they say something like, oh, I don't know how to do it. Oh, I'm trying my best. I mean, I'm like a broken record when I say, I'm literally said this to Marlene too earlier today. It's like, don't say you don't know how to do it until you failed multiple times trying, right? So, and don't say you're doing your best, because now everybody knows this is all you can do. Don't say you're doing your best unless you're actually doing your best, right? Don't say doing your best as a way to kind of cop out of the situation.
That's a good point. That's a really good way to put it. So see, it's like that advice right there, is so valuable, and to be able to say it with such confidence, is you learn that from stuff like you guys are doing, the road. You learn that from being close as a family, to just being open and communicative of saying, yes, these are our kids, but they're also our friends. We also have their best interest in mind. They have our best interest in mind. And that's just something that, sure, as families, maybe we don't, get set up financially the way that a lot of other kids get set up. But man, we're set up in other ways that those kids couldn't even fathom. And, sometimes it comes out right away, and sometimes it takes 10 years to grow into that person. I really feel like in the past year has been a really big growth year for me. And I've really kind of, I think my 20s were a lot of figuring it out. And I feel for the first time in a long time, more confident in who I am and who I want to be and where I want to go. And a lot of that was because I went through my 20s of just saying, I don't know, how do I do this? I don't know, how do I make this happen? And I relate, and I what am I trying to say? I allow that in my life strictly because of the way I was raised and my parents kind of opening up to me and saying, yeah, we didn't know how to do it either. We just figured it out. And I was like, okay.
I mean, that's the attitude that I'm trying to teach my kids to have, is exactly what you've been saying, which is, don't say you don't know how to do it. Say that you don't know. Admit that you don't know, and then learn how to do it, rather than throwing your hands up and saying, I can't do this. And also, like, really on top of all that is the old cliche is that your parents can give you a bunch of fish, but instead they taught you how to fish. Right? So now your wealth is in the knowledge of being able to know how to do this yourself.
Well, and your guys' kids too are going to have such a vast knowledge of, like, so like our family, we did all of our traveling in the States. We did a little bit in Mexico, a little bit in Canada, all that kind of stuff. But I think what I love about your kids' childhood is they have experience in different countries. They've seen the riches of, the States, and they've seen the poorest of, some
Monaco?
other, what they would call third world countries.
Getting kicked out of Monaco because we look too homeless.
See, and so they can understand the that's one thing that I wish we did a lot more, was international travel, was because it shows you so many different lifestyles, and saying, wow, you could see these people in Monaco, the richest of the rich or whatever, and they look happy, and you could see the poorest of the poor in all these, different corners of the world, and they look happy.
Yeah. Hey, I'm contributing to the wealth of Monaco personally, because I got dinged fat roaming charges on my cell phone, and some rich guy in Monaco is now living off of my pennies.
You're helping buy the next bottle of champagne over there.
Oh yeah,
what you're saying.
For sure. Maybe the next sip of champagne.
Yeah, exactly. No, so I'm so stoked to see the way that your guys' kids grow up with that knowledge of just international travel and living abroad and living, in the van, and seeing so many different aspects of this world. I think is such a great gift that you guys have been able to give them, that not a lot of kids have. And they're going to grow up and they're going to go into the real world with such a different mentality, and confidence, I'd say, honestly, that, international travel can give you, whether it's travel in the States or travel international, it just gives you so much confidence.
Well, I find it super interesting, because when you say that people are asking you from like the perspective of a kid who grew up on the road, and now there are parents asking you about whether or not they should take their kids, because they're asking you in a different perspective than the kind of questions we get asked, which is, he wants to be on the podcast.
I know. Chuck, do you want to say hi? Jesus. Hey.
So it's like a totally other end of the spectrum, but the same question on the other, on the same topic, which is how should I do this with my kids? And we can only give it to them from the adult side, from the parent side. Yeah. But I'm glad to hear that you're getting the same questions, but you're answering it from the perspective of the kids who grew up on the road. And if you were to have kids of your own, would you do this with them? And I mean, I'm not going to put you on the spot and say if you're going to have kids, but let's just hypothetically say that you had kids right now. Would you go on the road?
Yeah. I don't know that I would do it. Well, like, I think my mom would kill me if I never gave her grandkids. So, it's always been something.
She's a good Mexican.
She is a good Mexican. She is playing the role of it. That is for sure.
Yeah.
No, like, one of the things is that is one thing that I've always known that I want to be a father at some point. That is one thing. I look up to these fatherly figures that have raised me, and I see myself in that position. So I know that, one day that is a big goal of mine. Is I do want kids. I do want to share that information and pass it along. But I don't think that I would ever. I mean, I think me personally, I don't think that I would do it in the sense of buy an RV and travel the country kind of thing. I think I would do it differently of a couple of different mediums. I've always seen myself, raising a family on a sailboat. Just something different where it's similar to what I did, but it's in my own way. And it's going to my places that I want to. But I think, like, I don't know. I go back and forth on that. Like, do I want to do it full time and stuff? I think that I'd rather do it, for a year at a time instead of 10 years straight, kind of thing. But I do want them to see. I think one of the biggest things that my parents taught me and gave me was, let them see that you don't always have it together. Let them see, because as kids, we look at our parents as these monumental figures in our lives that they know everything. And sometimes it's really comforting to hear as a kid, I don't know everything. Let's figure this out together. I actually really don't know. Like, you teach me something, you know? And I think that...
Now, do you really think that should come at an early age for a kid? Or is there some kind of, like, age limit? Because a lot of the times, too, when, traveling internationally and some of the places that are not so safe necessarily, like, there has to be somebody who can provide a sense of safety, right? And there are situations where we're like, are we going to be okay?
Oh, totally. I mean, and there's a time and a place for all of that. I think, you'll your kids the best, and, sometimes they can handle it, sometimes they can't. But you're right. I mean, there is times where it's kind of like, we probably shouldn't tell them that, there was a cartel thing here, just a day before, or something, or, you do kind of have to.
We shouldn't watch Narcos Mexico while we're in Mexico.
Probably shouldn't watch Narcos down there, because they're like, wait, they're all in Panama right now, like.
Yeah.
That,
And Narcos Mexico literally, like, the series finale ends at present day, and then we're like sitting in, in the Yucatan.
That wasn't the best idea.
Luckily, it was just us watching, but it's still,
Exactly. But there is, that is interesting to hear from that perspective too, as the parents, is saying, there's probably certain things that we shouldn't tell our kids. It's not that we're keeping it from them, but maybe there will be a time be like, hey, remember 2 years ago when we were, down here? Like, this was happening, kind of thing.
Were you so when you were talking about this kind of experience that you have with your parents about learning that, they don't have it all together, they're not perfect, they're not the all-knowing, have everything figured out kind of person. Like, at what age did you think that was becoming more known to you?
I think a lot of it was around, I naturally, I want to say around like 16-ish or something. Okay. And
when you saw some struggles, like financially and stuff like that?
Because I started seeing it, and I started, you can kind of start picking it up. And I think also, too, a part of it was my parents wanted someone to talk to. They wanted someone a confidant in the family to... And
you're the closest person of the 5 that's to their age.
Exactly. So it was...
Just by a couple years, but still.
Just by a few years, yeah. but I'm the older brother. I take care of my sisters. I was the
You had
older
that
one
conversation. You're going to be the man of the family, kind of thing.
pretty much, yeah. And my dad wanted to, he really wanted to help me, be a man of the family. I need to help.
Yeah.
We need to keep the girls safe. You need to do this kind of thing. And that was really kind of that very typical coming of age kind of thing. And me and my dad had we butted heads hard, and but he was always like brutally honest with the way that he did things, because he expected a lot from me. There was a lot of big shoes to fill, and we butted heads a lot because I wanted my own thing and he wanted his own thing. And family is a huge thing for both of us, and both him and I as men, we fight fiercely for our family. We fight fiercely for the things that we love. My dad and I are exactly the same, and that's why sometimes we butt heads really great, and we hug really great. It's but we've gotten to this point of communication that's really great. And I think it was around 16, 17, I started really kind of getting a lot of those, going through my first heartbreak, and my dad kind of coming to me and saying, yeah, I've been there too. And so here's how I dealt with it. Here's how my mom dealt with it, blah, blah, blah. And I think like, I've always been such an emotional sap, a romantic sap kind of person and stuff too. And so like when I was going through a lot of learning, dating and all, going through this and going through my first girlfriend and blah, blah, blah. And, they really kind of helped me open up those walls and open up those, tear down those walls with them. And I think that was when I really started noticing a lot of those, kind of, okay, my parents are starting to open up a little bit more as adults, these adult conversations, and saying, like, cause I looked at my parents all the time. I was like, you guys have a perfect relationship. You guys are always happy. You guys never fight, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, that is far from the truth. We are not perfect.
Oh, I don't think our kids would think that about us. I mean, the thing about us as a family and being so close together all the time is that, yeah, the kids will see you guys fight. The kids will see the good times and the bad times, So I think to them, it's we're trying to be as much of like an open book as we can, but at the same time, like you can't show them everything at all ages. Like they're finally getting to the point, and I'm envious of your relationship with you and your parents, because you are fully an adult, independent on your own in your early 30s, and it is like you can have your parents as friends now. And not that you weren't friends before, but for sure more on a peer-to-peer level as ever.
Oh, it's totally different now. Yeah.
We're not quite there. We're probably, maybe 5 to 10 years from being there. But that's something that
probably about that
I'm looking forward to, but I don't know what that would be like.
Yeah. And that's the best thing is just time. It's just time, just patience, and we've gone through our. I've gone through bouts where I haven't talked to my parents in 6 months, or maybe not that long, or it's been a long time. There's been some times where we just butt heads completely and just shut them off completely, and you just have to trust that process of wanting and the willingness to come back, because we always said we're never going to be the family that doesn't talk for 5 years. We're not going to be that family that doesn't show up at each other's weddings, or we're not going to be that kind of family through thick and thin. We're going to figure it out. And I think that's just like in our blood. No matter how much we can fight, no matter how much we, butt heads on something, we're always going to end up back to each other. It's just inevitable, because that's all we know. Like you're saying with your kids, that's all they know is their family, and our matching tattoos. I mean, I'm branded now.
Yeah, you're branded.
So I'm branded. It's like the Yellowstone Ranch. We're all branded.
Yeah, we just started watching that actually. We just finished season 1.
Oh, really? Oh, it's so good. It's it's so good. And we always joke about that. Any other times, me, Kesley, and Sonny have dated people brought into the family or whatever. It's like, no, you're not just dating Austin. You're dating the whole Bare Naked family. Like, it is a package deal. And also, yes, my mom is gonna upload fucking everything on Facebook. My aunt and uncles are gonna know about you. Our road families, are gonna know about you and stuff like that. It's a package deal that comes into this. One of my favorite quotes was, we did this like news interview thing back in Austin, and the anchor guy was like, "I pity the fool who marries into this family," or something. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in, but But
Well, speaking of your mom, like she was always a storyteller. Also, I mean, your dad as well, but your mom has written books about your exploits. Have you ever done any work with your mom in like doing maybe a project of storytelling or creating content together? Because I feel like she's got a lot of opinions and she's a very vibrant person, and I feel like that she could probably leverage your creativity and skills and bring the stories that she has to tell to another level. Have you ever considered doing something like that?
Definitely. We've never done something together. I mean, I've shot like photos for them, like what our book cover. I've shot the photos for it and that kind of thing. I've edited certain things together, but I've always actually wanted to. So like, I've wanted to do that for my mom, is sit her down and actually set up more of a documentary kind of looking interview and actually have her do readings. Read out a chapter of the book, or have my parents kind of sitting side by side and having this open commentary about going a little bit more in depth of behind the scenes kind of thing of like, well, let's really dig into that chapter. Let's, because video is such a great way. You see the emotions on the face, you hear the voice, you hear, you see the body language change. So I have always thought about that. And actually I picked her brain too, is I've always wanted to write my own book from my perspective of it, is because everyone always hears the parents' perspective of, we gave our kids this life and blah, blah, blah. But exactly what kind of, what I'm
honestly,
here,
until our conversation today, a lot of these stories are me hearing your perspective for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
it's not the same. It's not the same story.
It's kind of
no. It's along the same lines, but it's definitely from a different perspective, and it is a story that I think needs to be told from both sides.
And that's great to hear, because I keep hearing it multiple times from kids my age that had very similar experiences, or parents. Really, a lot of it is just parents being like, "Hey, you grew up in this, and you were the oldest. Help us understand our kid. Like, help us.
Yeah.
What is it? What are they thinking? How can I help?" And I think it is. It will happen at some point in this decade. Is actually something I've thought about really heavily, is writing my own book. And I've actually always wanted to adapt our story into its own. I was randomly talking to a friend about this, is they were like, "You guys need your own movie. Like, this needs to be like Captain Fantastic or something, so I was like, well, maybe I kind of write a screenplay for it or something. I have all these big ideas for that, and not necessarily based on us only, but based on
inspired by your
road,
experiences,
going through these hardships, inspired by it. Not full like Robin Williams RV kind of style, where it's
not
the fun stuff about it,
not a slapstick comedy.
not like all the Gornickies and the that kind of thing, but more of the real pain behind something, the growing up, the not lighthearted fun stories of it, so I have always thought about that. I really do want to write a book eventually, just kind of on my own perspective. Is I think I've been waiting. I've thought about it when I was a kid, when I was 20s or something, but I think I had to keep going through my adult process until I could get to the point of considering writing a book. But it is something that I've thought about, and I've chatted with my mom about that. She's totally fully on board with it, because I think it is a perspective, like you're saying, that can help not only kids in my situation, but it can also help parents kind of understand, like you're just saying, is different perspectives of, wow, I never thought about that coming from a teenager, or this identity crisis, or maybe that's why this person's doing this, and how can I help? So I think you're right. I think it is a responsibility for me to tell, and something I think I'd have a lot of fun with.
And this is something that we've considered as well, which is, what is the story like? But I think for you and for us too, is like, we always feel like that, well, how can I tell a story when it doesn't have an ending yet? Now, do you feel like your story has an ending?
Yes.
And I guess as far as your story as it relates to your relationship with the five of you as a family while traveling on the road has an ending, but do you feel like that your story that continues on your own, do you feel like that story has an ending, or are you still seeing the same story progressing further?
Another really good question. You're just full of You're full of good questions. I love it. I listened to Matthew McConaughey's book Green Lights, and he talks a lot about like his childhood and growing up, and kind of this, his own biography, and that that story necessarily didn't have an end, and so I think I could see an end though for that chapter of my life of going from kid,
Yeah.
teenager to young adult. That's where I think I
mean,
wrap
it's
it up in saying.
Right. It's not a story of your entire life. It's a story of a portion of your life. It's like a coming of age story, right? So that part of it has an end, feels like.
Yes, and I feel like here's everything leading up to who I am now, and the things that I'm going to do now. And I think it is. I think it could be a coming of age story because I have, for this new decade of mine I do have a lot of plans that are going to take me, like I said, I want to travel on a sailboat more. I want to have that be my RV. I want to buy a house. I want to live in Durango half the year, and I want to live in Baja or Florida or the Key or the Bahamas, whatever it is, for 6 months. So I think a story of mine, a book of mine, would end with that. Here's from me as a kid to a young adult, and ending that coming of age, becoming a man, basically, as however you want to put it, adolescence or whatever. Is my 20s were really interesting. I think it was I was kind of the dog off leash for a while, trying to learn how to become who I am in my 30s now, and a lot of that was was Oregon for me, and that's why it was really hard for me to leave Bend. Not hard in the I wanted to get out of there, but it was, I definitely, as I was leaving Bend, I was really like, wow, that was my first time living on my own. It was my first time in a spot that I chose, and I built a career there. I built a following there. I became in this town that I really looked up to, at the beginning of the 10 years and at the end of the 10 years, as I became one of the Bend photographers. I built myself up there. I was known. And I think it was for me being able to show myself that I don't need my family. I don't need this crutch. I can actually build a career on my own. And I can be financially stable, even though I'm not always financially stable, but I can make this work. Okay, I can do this on my own. And I remember having this time, I pulled over on the side of the road after I was leaving Bend, and I just broke down. I just completely lost it in my truck. And it was because I was literally feeling this turning page chapter. And it was the turning page of moving out of the RV in my parents' home for the first time to moving into myself. And now I'm moving into what I would consider adulthood versus young adulthood. So yeah, I think that's where that chapter would really end. And I think that I had to go through that to be where I am now, to have the emotional maturity to kind of look back, and remember these stories, and the emotional maturity to say, hey, I haven't made all A's. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've been an egotistical person. I've been I've been humbled. I've been, I've gone through my stuff, and I've stepped in a lot of shit along the way, but it's, can I just scrape it off my boot and keep going, yeah. And then just being able to have the emotional maturity to realize that my parents always had the best interest in mind for me, and everything they did for me was leading me to be the man I am today, and I couldn't thank them enough for it. No matter how much we butted heads or didn't talk, I couldn't thank them enough for every single moment of my childhood leading up till now.
Well, I'll tell you that I watch that movie and I read that book, and you better get writing.
All right, perfect. Well, then I got fire under my ass. Then,
you got some work to do. You got some work to do, Austin.
Yep. We'll find the perfect casting for my dad. Maybe like Eddie Vedder or something like that, or I don't know.
Oh wow, yeah. I don't know. I mean, he's got big shoes to fill. Eddie, I don't know if Eddie can pull it off.
Oh, that's true too. I don't know. We'll get someone.
Cool.
But no, it would be a fun one to write. It would be a fun one to write.
I'm super excited to see where you go from here, because you're in your early 30s, which is actually when we started traveling. We started traveling when we were 31, 32.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that actually. I thought I was younger.
No, I mean, at the time, we just had Ava, and she was a year old. And if we were your parents, we'd be in our 20s when they had their first kid, right? Were they in their early 20s?
Yeah.
So
actually, my dad was in his early 20s. My mom was 17 when she had me. 17 or 18 when she had me.
Okay.
Yeah,
so for sure, they got going quick. Again, he's a good Mexican.
As my parents say, the older we got, as my parents. Well, actually, no, they've been telling me this since I was like 11. They're like, we couldn't keep your hands off each other. I was like, great. Mom, I've been truly uncomfortable having this.
You don't want to visualize that. You cannot get this out of your head.
No.
I mean,
like, thanks, Mom.
So given the same sort of like child raising timeline, we should be younger. But at the same time, when we had kids in our early 30s, 30, 31 is when we decided to have kids. We thought we were having kids really late, and I think we were compared to a lot of other people. But nowadays, it felt like we had kids really early because everybody's having kids. I mean, if you were your parents, if following your parents' footsteps, you should have a 14-year-old by now, right?
Oh yeah, it's a trip. I'd have 3 kids by. I think my dad had 3 kids by the time he was 20. God, it was like 25,
you would be,
like mid-20s or something.
Buying a coffee shop and running it with your kids at this point, basically.
It's wild to think about. It's so wild to think
right?
about. Yeah, so
I mean, that's
my parents.
That's the thing, you have all this story that you have to tell already, but from like the life perspective of things, I think you're really just getting started. Because you have.
No, I think you're spot on.
So I think all this stuff is super exciting, and I think there's a whole new chapter that hopefully we'll get to experience with you. And maybe on a more lighter and technical note, being like camera nerds ourselves, let's talk about gear a little bit. What kind of, as a photographer, like what are you shooting on, and what is your sort of, like go-to gear?
Love talking about gear.
Me too.
Oh man, love it. I have gear for every sport you could imagine. I mean, it's ridiculous. Camera gear though, I shoot on all Sonys. I switched to shooting Sony mirrorless 8 years ago. I want to say I was on Canon for a long time, and so I shoot on all Sonys right now. I have Sony A7R III has been my workhorse, and I'm actually working on getting a R4 or R5, one of the newer ones. And then I have a handful of different lenses. Actually, one of my favorite lenses lately has been so this little guy right here is a little 28 millimeter prime f2 lens, and
is that a Sigma? Or is that
this is a Sony. Yeah, this is a Sony one, and so. This lens has been just prime 28 millimeter f2. This has been kind of one of my go-to lenses. And then I have an assortment of G Master lenses as well. So 24 to 75 is 24 to 70. Sorry, is one of my favorite lenses.
Yeah. f2.8.
Yeah. Yep. Just this guy. I absolutely love it. I use this one a lot. And then I shoot a lot of wide stuff too. So 16 to 35 281 is one of my absolute favorites. And then one of my absolute, so I don't shoot a ton of film, but when I do, I shoot on this little guy. It's this little Nikon LF35 or AF35, and it's just a point and shoot little dad camera. I love it so much. It has a little pop-up flash. And then I actually just bought, here, I'll show you guys. I just pulled the trigger on a big Cine camera.
Oh man.
Wow.
Yeah, so I have a big FS7. So this is the
FS7.
Sony FS7.
Oh my god, that thing is legendary. And you can get one of those like relatively affordable now, right? Like $1,500 or something.
Yeah, so I just bought this off some friends of mine. I know it's.
Was it already all rigged out? Or did you have to rig it out?
No, it was already all rigged out pretty much. I put a couple of my own stuff on it, but I bought it from some really good friends of mine, and I got that case, everything like that. And it was great. It was like $2,500 or something like that. And they gave me a ton of stuff for it. So I just kind of,
that,
you know, because I'm
that's
a
like
nerd,
so many.
I just built it out. Already, but I can have it as more of a run and gun kind of setup.
Right.
And then have a flip up visor for it too. And I have a couple other monitors too I can put on there, but actual focus pullers and all that. So this is what I'm going to shoot a lot of video on. I have a couple of different projects I'm working on currently, and yeah, so I'm pretty.
Have you
hyped
done
on that.
any work with it yet, or is that so new that you're still in the tinkering stage?
I'm still like just sitting in my room playing with it. No, I bought it from them like last weekend or something like that.
Oh,
very,
wow.
Very new.
Yeah, super new.
That's very cool.
Very new, but
well, I
yeah.
can't wait.
So that's kind of
can't wait to see
everything
what you
I
do with
shoot
that
on.
thing.
And then oh man, I can't wait either. It's gonna be awesome. And then I have a Mavic Air 2 that I shoot on as well. I'm actually gonna be getting.
Okay.
I want to be shooting one of the Mavic Pro 3s. So I'm gonna be. I really want to get one of those here pretty soon. And then, yep, one of the big guys. And then I actually love. Have you guys seen the DJI Avatas? They're like the little.
I mean,
he's
little
been
tiny.
watching a lot of YouTube videos.
I've got it in my Amazon cart. The second that I know when I'm landing in the U.S., it'll be delivered to a box somewhere. I mean, that looks like so much fun.
So bad. Yep.
So bad.
Yep. I've never been into like the FPV really like crazy stuff. Well, and that's why I really like the Avata is because it's technically what's called a cine whoop. It can do both.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
So it's technically what's called a cine whoop drone, and so it's you can have a little bit of that feel. But what I really like about it is I want to use those FPV ones to do cinematic moves and really slow stuff in tight spaces. I don't really want to do the whole crazy flipping crazy go nuts.
Yeah, you're not racing.
That kind of thing.
But I mean, like you can definitely do like car shots, driving shots a lot more cinematically and a lot more dynamic than you can just a camera drone like a Mavic.
Yes, totally. So I really want to get one of those. I've been flying drones since they were the big Phantom white crazy quadcopters.
I mean, I literally just saw one of my
like Instagram
memories from when I bought my first DJI Phantom 2, and that was 10 years ago.
Yeah. And then we look at the footage, and it was like, oh, that wasn't as pretty as we thought it was.
When I had my Phantom 2, it was like, I think it was November of 2013 when I bought it, and I remember flying this Phantom 2 that has a GoPro 3 on it, and I had to get this I had to rig up this radio transmitter to get my own monitor, mount on the controller, and have to do all this. Once it's flying, when it's in the air, if you forget to hit record, you don't even know that it's not recording. That's happened to me multiple times.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking at the time, seeing the footage coming out of it with the 3-axis gimbal and all that, thinking that this is the peak of this technology. It can't get any better. There's nothing they can do to make this technology any more advanced. And, I mean, I've been wrong a lot of times, and that was one of my biggest debacles.
I remember thinking about that too when I got my first drone. It was the big Phantom white one and whatnot. And I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like, I don't need to shoot from a helicopter ever. I have my own helicopter. Yeah. And I was like, oh man, it could go, what was it? I can't remember the range on that thing. It was like a mile maybe, or like less than a mile.
Flies for like 8 minutes. Yeah. I thought like 8 minutes was amazing.
And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I don't need to go and then now my drone, I think if I had I don't know, its technical range or whatever is like 8 miles, and some of the other ones now are like
something ridiculous
15 or something.
Right. You can fly that far, but it can't fly back because it's too far away.
It can't fly back. It can go that far, but it's not flying back.
Yeah.
Well, and the other funny thing too is same thing with these Sonys is I've been watching. I've had I've had 5 of these cameras now, something like that, just upgrading them and trashing them, and all sorts of things. But then I remember, when the R3 came out, or when the R2 came out, I still have one, and it was 40 megapixel sensor, and I was like, this is ridiculous. You don't need it anymore. Now they're on 65. Right. No,
it's insane.
Now they're on 65 megapixel cameras or something. It's insane. So just watching the technology grow has been wild. Oh, and then have you guys ever on the new Lightroom updates, have you guys played around with the denoising, the AI denoising stuff on there yet?
I've been using the denoising in some of the really high ISO stuff, but I didn't realize it was AI involved. Is it?
They say, I don't know. They say it's AI.
Is it in beta still, or is it out of beta? Like, I always thought the normal denoising was pretty good.
The normal denoising is really good, but I shot, what was it? I shot something on like 30,000 ISO or something. I was testing it out, and I shot something on 30,000 ISO, and you pull up the exposure a little bit, and you just see the rings around, and it's just pink, grainy, crazy stuff. And I applied literally one click, and I applied that, and I put a comparison up on Instagram a long time ago, but you apply that denoise thing, and it just looked like I shot it at 400 ISO. It is wild.
The thing about this AI stuff, like the trouble that I have with the AI stuff is that when you're just editing in Lightroom and you're taking out certain things here and there, like you add a little contrast, you denoise a little bit, like traditionally pre-AI, it is still, all the stuff that you're editing is still based on your own original creation. Now, when you bring AI in, it is literally bringing in somebody else's stuff and then adding it to yours. Yeah, it does look amazing, and it's like the quality is like you can't do it without AI, but at the same time, like how far does this stuff go? With all the stuff that's going with AI now, I have some concerns about where it goes for creative people.
I was just talking with a friend about this because same thing is like the way AI is getting is like the way AI is getting is just insane. And there was this story recently of this these people this guy submitted a photograph to this really prestigious photography competition or whatever, and
he won it.
He won it, and it was a completely AI generated image. And nobody knocked
it
off.
He didn't pick up a single camera for this award.
Nope. Just went in there and said, "Well, do this." And he came out, wrote a whole article about it, gave everything back, but he basically wanted to prove a point that it is scary how crazy this is getting. And I mean, that was a whole big thing with like the Hollywood writer's strike that just went on, or the writer's strike and stuff, was a lot of it was around AI. And though there's great things that AI can do and whatnot, yes, it will never replace human creativity, or it'll never replace humans completely.
Right.
But, man, it is,
at the end of the day, it is drawing from existing human creations and then adapting existing creation to new creations, but without continual creation by actual humans, it will at some point will the snake be eating its tail at some point? Like, is AI going to iteratively generate stuff that it created itself to create new content? And is that ever, at what point does that become so good, yet at the same time that it's been iterated amongst itself so much that it's just not creative anymore? So that's the thing that's interesting to think about. And we don't really know, because technology is going so fast, and it's like the people that are creating the technology, they're not willing to slow down because they fear that somebody else will catch up, whatever lead that they have.
Yeah. It is wild. It is scary to think,
that's
too.
The troubling aspect.
It is a very, very troubling aspect. And it's troubling in the sense that it's like, it's little things too in photos where, you could take a photo and then say, here, add a bridge right here. And it just adds a bridge, and it's like, or take this sky.
You have 3 bridges to choose from. That was never there. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that is like, are you still being creative? Like, I get that at that point you're almost a painter, which I'm not against, be an AI artist, whatever, come up with something cool, come up with I love looking at some of the AI homes that they come up with, like the cabins and these crazy kitchen designs and all that. That's wicked cool. I love doing that because it gives me ideas to do for a kitchen one day of myself. But it is scary to think that how many times is it being utilized out there for plagiarism, essentially, or how many times is how many people are uploading these photos acting like they're their own. What definitely scares me though is the deep fake stuff of they can take,
for sure. I mean, that's a whole topic all on its own, right? Like
that
the kind of
me
harm
is
that
they
it
could
can
take
do.
I think it's like, as long as there's 5 photos of your face on the internet, they can make a video basically of you.
It used to take
or
hours and
like
hours
that.
of footage, but it's gotten to the point where they can almost create things instantly.
Which is wild, and that was a big thing I remember in the Hollywood strike was they were talking about that for I think it was background extras, using the likeliness of people, AI. So there was a bill signed in that Hollywood is protected in some level. I can't remember exactly, but there's they'll never be able to use AI for the likeliness of like Leonardo DiCaprio or something like that. Oh my god. The cutie. That's awesome. Yeah, it's wild. The deepfake stuff is definitely something that freaks me out because I've heard phone calls that people will make and it's completely AI generated.
Well, especially right now during the
their daughter
political like election cycle. This is a super scary time.
Oh yeah,
to have this technology.
Yeah. I miss the days of having like a Motorola Razr as my phone and no Instagram on it or anything.
Yeah,
makes me really realize, wow, I had it really good back then.
We had it really good back then, but you know what? Like the Pandora's box is wide open. Like we can't put it away. It's scary.
No, it's there, and I've been trying to guide myself away from social media as much as I can. As much as I love it, it's a really great tool. And I've had this conversation with a lot of other
from a business standpoint, you can't not have something.
No, it'd be ridiculous not to have it. But what I've noticed in the social media world is that a lot of people, and this goes into that other photography conversation we were having of just how it's not really unique as much anymore, and it gives a lot of false egos. It gives a lot of false sense of I am a professional photographer to a lot of people because they're just basically copying everybody else, and they get 100,000 followers on Instagram, and then they think they're a big time photographer. And a lot of it, I've gotten to work on the marketing side of this as well too, as a business. And what's interesting to me is I've had these conversations with other marketing managers, and they're saying, business wise, it's smarter for me to go out and give a kid $500 in gear for 100 mediocre photos than it is for me to pay $5-10 grand for 20 professionally shot photos. And I was like, actually, yeah, that makes sense. But then what happens to that person on the other side of it is it inflates their ego to say, oh, I'm Patagonia.
They won't be cheap forever.
No, it will. And what happens though is this person, say, person A or whatever, gets hired by company A as, a Kavu or a Black Diamond or whatever. And they're basically just like, Black Diamond's like, yeah, I'll send you some free harnesses, whatever. Then what happens is that kid goes on and says, oh, my client is Black Diamond. And it's like, yes, you technically shot photos for Black Diamond, but you're not, they're not a client.
They think they're at the same level as an actual photographer who's doing...
And so it's great on the business side and it's great on the other kid side, but it's also horrible on the business side and it's also horrible on the creative side too, because it gives this false sense of importance and it gives this false sense of professionalism. Because it kind of cheapens
your resume. Yeah.
Well, and so actual professionals out there is it cheapens us. Because when I come in and say I'm $5 grand, I'm $10 grand for a shoot or something, then they're like, "Well, I'll just give it to this kid for some mediocre photos."
That guy did it with some ropes and some carabiners.
Totally, yeah, exactly. So it's watching that change and navigating that as a professional myself has been wildly frustrating and wildly exhausting because you're selling yourself. You're having to sell yourself so much more now. And as much as I think a lot of it, I definitely take free things from people, but it's I do it intentionally, I guess. Like I've taken free tires, and shot, stuff that is useful for me. But you'll never take, like, one of the hard things that I've had to learn is you'll never take a client that gives you something for free, and rarely will you ever turn them into a paying client because they're going to go to the client that did it for free. They're not going to start paying you, kind of thing.
It's the mentality of the client. The mentality of the client who went out there trying to get something for nothing to begin with is the one that will never pay $10,000 for a shoot.
Totally.
So you have to find clients that value. And the troubling part that I see right now is that these big companies are hiring a lot of sort of social media managers or digital marketing managers that have that mentality, that kind of grew up as this kind of social influencer ambassador roles, and they say, okay, the way to make this business work is to go out and find people, doing what I was doing before I got this job. So then now they represent these big companies, these corporations that formerly had a budget, but now they're directing their budget into these more sort of, like brand ambassador, social media driven roles where they're just willing to give away a few things here and there, or looking for a specific kind of viral look to kind of get their name out there, rather than being like the brand manager that wants to dictate how the brand should look and have ideas about how the brand should look, and then goes out and finds partners that are either photographers or videographers or copywriters or other content creators that will help them see their goal, instead of letting the influencer drive how they want to promote their brand. And I think that we've come across a few companies that kind of have gone down that road, which is, we want people that are taking these types of photos, and we only want to work with them if they're influencers that have X number of followers, or that have like this particular look in their social media, rather than looking at people as creatives to say, okay, if you can do this, that means you can also do what I need, right?
Yeah.
Rather than seeing people's potential, they seeing, okay, like, what do you have? What can you do for me right now? So I think that road, unfortunately, I feel like it's going to get rougher and rougher. I don't know where that ends, but on the other hand, as we were talking about before, I feel like the differentiation is going to be in the storytelling. It's going to be in like what you contribute in all these other aspects of creativity.
Yes, and that's really where it comes down to. Is exactly that. And one of the best ways that I've differentiated clients was, do you want my Instagram or do you want my website? Is a really good way to do that.
Right.
Because then you'll see, do you want to use me as a billboard or do you want to use me as a creative? And then they can see, especially on the website and stuff, they can see more of that storytelling that okay, there's more depth here. There's more meat here, basically. He can take on more, essentially. So that's really what I've focused on is, yes, becoming a better photographer technically and making sure I'm using the right gear, make sure I'm, shooting the right kind of style stuff, but making sure that me as a person is able to walk into a room and sell myself and also deliver at the end of the day something that, is better than what they expected. That's my biggest goal, is just to make myself as appealing as I can, to a wide range of clients, and being able to also adapt to whatever the client needs. Adaptation is, I think, the best form of professionalism in my industry as a photographer.
So it sounds to me like you're fairly optimistic about this field of photography and storytelling and videography. I mean, do you have any immediate projects or goals that you're excited about?
Yeah. One of them is I actually am taking on kind of my first directing role of directing a short film on a friend of mine. He had an accident recently, a paragliding accident that took him out for a few months, but he's doing really amazing things. Like, he's been a world record highliner holder and stuff. And so we're kind of doing a documentary that's kind of a very typical, recovery story and getting back into his sports and stuff. But the reason I came in and kind of added my 2 cents to the table is I said, well, that kind of thing has been done so many times, kind of copy and pasted. Like, guy gets into an accident,
his road
recovers,
to being back to who he was.
Yeah, it's just, and it's a great story. It's a great formula. It works, but I really want to dig into more of that, is more of the psyche of it, more of the storytelling, and then more of the ways that it affects the people around him more. Saying, do we want him to be, obviously we want him to be recovered, but do we want him to continue down this path? And what does that mean for it? What does that mean for the future? Are you going to be more careful? Are you going to, take those same risks, instead of kind of just a very typical story of, oh yeah, I've learned a lot and blah, 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 and I'm going back into it, and you do the same thing. But yeah, I'm trying to dig more into the story of the chapters of that, and dealing with the past stuff, and dealing with the, bringing more of a cinematic movie style approach to it. So I'm really excited about that. That's going to be going on for the next year or something, and it's just kind of a big passion project that we have. And then, yeah, there's just a bunch of different travel this summer I really want to do. I really want to knock out some more international stuff. Like I've mentioned here, is I'm really excited for the fact of seeing where, I can go for the winter, and bringing my skills to an industry that I haven't ever done before. So like sailing and stuff, is I really want to create more storytelling in that aspect as well. And just kind of settling into the new home, just settling into Durango and Colorado, and learning the community here and stuff. So I think really it's just kind of my year of, it's honestly been one of the best years so far in my life. It's kind of that thing where I've asked the universe for a lot, and I've been listening, and I've been done the preparation for it, and it's just kind of been rewarding, as it comes. So I'm just kind of taking it all in right now.
That's awesome. I'm really excited to see, how this passion project goes, and I can't wait.
Yeah,
it sounds like it's going to be a while before we get to see anything, but I'll be waiting.
Yeah, a little bit.
Let's. We have this kind of lightning round thing that we do at the end, and it's not totally lightning round. It doesn't have to be like 2-3 words in your answer. You can elaborate a little bit, but they're sort of just things that we want to, kind of get you to answer on the top of on the tip of your tongue. So we'll go with the first one. I'm just gonna go with this. So, who inspires your current work, and also like who do you aspire your work to be in the near future?
Like as photography and that kind of stuff?
Or just as a creative. Sure.
Oof. I draw a lot of inspiration from different artists. Man, it's a really good one. Honestly, like I wouldn't say that I necessarily draw it from other photographers. I really, I respect a lot of other photographers' works, and I look up to that. But I really draw inspiration from the people that I surround myself with, friends and stuff. And when I see them wanting to do their passion projects, and maybe they have a big project that they're trying to climb, or maybe they have a ski line they're trying to do, I think that really drives my inspiration for, okay, they're really excited on this, so I really want to shoot it for them, and I really want to capture this for them. That's something that really inspires me, is just the friends and the family that I keep around me, and the excitement they have for their things.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, in fact, we hear that a lot from people. That's how we are too, is the people that we surround ourselves with. Next one, along the same lines, who inspires you in your travels? I know that you just, are getting more into sailing, and with your history, traveling on the road and stuff like that. Who currently do you look to and say, oh, I want to do that?
I've used this example a lot, is me in 10 years.
Okay.
That's who I draw.
Where do you see that?
Is where am I going to be?
Do you see you like ideally, rounding Cape Horn in your sailboat, or?
I see myself living that lifestyle of, all right, I'm living where I want to be in the summers. I'm not in snow all the time. So living where I want to be in the summers, and then, really making sailing a big part of my life, and sailing, Mexico, sailing down near Colombia and Central America and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually, one day over to French Polynesian Islands and New Zealand, Australia, that kind of stuff. So
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a friend that's actually in the middle of her crossing right now.
Yeah, to French.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And it's so different now because she's got Starlink, so she's posting regular updates.
A little blue dot in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's posting reels and like stories. Okay, next one. If you could own 3 pieces of land in 3 different places, where would they be? And I probably already know 2 of them, because I think you're in one, and I think maybe Baja's another one.
You got that right.
Okay. Where would a third place be, and what would you like? These are just plots of land with nothing on it, and what would you build on them, like within a reasonable budget?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, definitely. So you got the two is Colorado and Baja for sure.
Is that enough? I mean,
And then
that you don't have to have a third one. That can totally be enough.
oh, that would be. I mean, but hey, if we're going three, we might as well go three. I've always
Right, go three.
I've always loved Montana.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd go back to the Pacific Northwest. I just did a lot there. But honestly, Montana being up in a little bit more wetter climate for some fly fishing and just mountains and backcountry stuff like that. I think that'd be a good, Montana, Colorado, and Baja. I think I'm covering all bases right there.
That's the trifecta.
That's the trifecta right there. Exactly.
If you could choose any rig, to overland travel with, what would it be?
Ooh.
I mean, this one, sky's the limit. Whatever you want. And I know for a lot of people, they may shoot for the moon, but for us that have been on the road a fair amount of time, we know the pros and cons of different rigs. So I'm interested in hearing what you would do.
Well, first, it's a lot of people would go, "Oh, I want the big Earth Cruiser."
Big Unimog or
Unimog, exactly. I think my ideal thing would be like a flatbed Tacoma with a camper on it, with the Hauerbilt camper on it, flatbed Tacoma, because they're nimble enough, they're powerful enough. You don't need much power. You need a lot of torque, but having the flatbed Tacoma access cab, because I still have a short wheelbase, at least with my truck right out here, is, I have the single cab. It's a super short wheelbase, so getting that thing in and out of places is amazing. But it's also, because it's like exactly what you said is, I've done this for so long, I've built out rigs and stuff, is I don't need the big crazy thing, because then what happens when you're driving through LA? What happens when you're driving through San Francisco? I can
can't
fit
go
this
everywhere.
thing. You just can't go everywhere. So this thing it has the same wheelbase as like a Subaru Forester. So being able to turn around in trails, being really nimble with it, and also not having a crazy, obnoxious, big city driver is awesome, because I love driving in the cities too. So I think my ideal rig like that would be the Tacoma flatbedded with a camper. Pretty similar power build out that I have in here, because power is a big thing for me. And having that Hauerbilt camper topper on it has been awesome, because I can just lift so much weight on top of it, which is, I travel with a lot of gear. So that would be the ideal one right there.
Toys. Okay. This next one.
I know you're dying to ask this one.
In-N-Out Burger or Whataburger?
Oh, Whataburger all the way. Whataburger. I gotta do it.
I'm going to withhold my opinions on that, but somebody's got to eat Whataburger, right?
Somebody's got to eat. I'm a Texas boy. What are you supposed to say?
I know.
I'm a Texas boy. I have Whataburger.
You can't not say Whataburger.
I cannot. So the thing,
you cannot.
There's a
They'll
certain
disown
thing
you.
There's a certain difference. There's a certain difference with In-N-Out Burger and Whataburger, is they toast their buns in a different way. I'm telling you, that's the one thing, is they toast their buns in a different way. And Whataburger,
okay. You like the way they're toasted.
Man. All
right. Okay, so last one. Last one, and if the three of us were to start a business together, what would it be?
Ooh. So I immediately go to some sort of travel creative business storytelling thing. Would be
leverage our experiences, right?
Leverage the experiences and say, all right, each of us have our own position here. But I think with a lot of those, we have a lot of connections, I think, that would work really well together. So I think some sort of marketing, content, storytelling business, podcasts, stuff like this would be great.
Right. Love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then we could film the podcasts like this. We could do podcasts like this, but film them in a documentary kind of style. And then with all of these stories that I'm telling, is we splice in and make a short film. We splice in home video from that, so it becomes a short film podcast. First of its kind.
Right. First of its kind.
So did we just start a business?
Now someone's going to steal our idea.
Nobody copy it. It's copyrighted right here.
All right, we're canceling this episode.
Trademark.
This episode can't go out.
We got to cut this part out.
Copyright. Done right there. We'll just
cool.
bleep out that whole thing. We'll just
Yeah, right.
And make them
It's going to be just
what we're talking about.
like a constant like beeping tone.
It's
through
just
the whole
bad
thing.
words the whole time.
And it's just like,
hear.
yeah, right. Every single bad word in every single language.
Yep,
It's the opposite of bleeping.
It's the opposite of bleeping. We're just saying it in a foreign language, so not a lot of people can hear.
Well,
man, that's a good
I
question.
feel like we covered all that we can cover.
Yeah, I really.
How do you feel about this?
Yeah.
Are you content?
I love this.
I mean,
this has been great. This has been great, and it's really cool because being able to talk like this and share those stories is like there's realizations that I come up with in my head as I'm talking to you guys, and it's like, oh wow, I haven't thought about that in a long time. So being able to have that kind of space to go through it and relive some of those memories and relive them in a different way, it's just been awesome. And then hearing more of your guys' stories and how where your guys' heads are as parents too is really awesome for myself.
Well, I mean, the feeling is definitely mutual, and
I love it.
I hope to see you again. I think we won't be back in the U.S. and you probably won't be down here while we're down here, but hopefully we'll see you when we get back, which will be maybe a little less than a year from now.
Or maybe we'll see you in Baja.
Sweet.
Or maybe we'll see you in Baja.
Oh,
we'll wave to you on your boat.
I would love that. Yeah, there you go.
For sure, say hi to your parents for us. We haven't talked to them in ages. And I hope to see them soon too at some point.
Thank you for chatting with us.
Yeah.
Of course. Thanks guys, for doing this, and
hope you had a good time
on this. I had a blast. It was awesome. I loved it. I loved every moment of it.
So there you go. That is our podcast episode with Austin. As you can tell, he is an amazing person. He's in his early 30s. He's already got a full life of experience. Mm-hmm. So we're very excited to see where he goes next. In fact, as you saw in the podcast, that right around his age is when we started full-time traveling. What he does going forward is really exciting for us to watch. So we want to thank you, Austin, for being on our podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. We had fun.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Yeah, and we hope to see you in Colorado or somewhere on the road, maybe in Baja.
Maybe on a sailboat.
Maybe on a sailboat in Baja when we get back.
All right, done.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening to our podcast, and we'll see you guys in the next one.